Last January, on impulse, I'd bought a tall, skinny little house on East 8th. It was a foreclosure, the only reason I could afford it. Then I realized I couldn't actually afford it, not after discovering the faulty plumbing, the insurance, the mold. But I'd been so blinded by the need to prove that I could do something on my own that I convinced myself I could make it work. This was stupid. I know this now. By the time summer rolled around, there was no getting around it. To keep the house, I'd need a roommate. It would have to be a stranger. Someone who wouldn't pry and wheedle her way into my life, or worse, my past. I knew I would not find someone like this on the Southie Rentals app or on roomcare.com. Those people liked to go to brunch. They expected granite countertops. They'd want to talk. Craigslist was more my speed, I decided, more anonymous. This, as it turned out, was also very, very stupid. August. When I got back to the kitchen after cleaning the upstairs, I realized I'd left the bills right out on the counter. Not only that, you could see the mold over by the fridge. The house was a dump, but I had to at least try to mask this before the first candidate arrived in 15 minutes. For the mold, at least, I'd found a solution. Hide it with a big-ass plant. The pot was massive, up to my knees, and inside was a raggedy, browning bamboo plant. I'd picked it up at an estate sale earlier that morning and had managed to heave the hulking thing into the kitchen, where it now sat on top of the mold. But right now, it was still peeking out, that black rot. I squatted and hugged the pot, sliding it to the right. There. Next, the mail. As I swept the pile into the drawer, the name inside the clear envelope window of one envelope caught my eye, turning my stomach. Maggie Nevins, 19 Punkhorn Lane, Marshside, Massachusetts. Mags, Dad would call me. Or Mom, sometimes, through her wine-stained veneers. Maggie the Mood. The person to whom these bills were addressed no longer existed. Unfortunately, I, Margo Sharpe, was still responsible for the balances, the late fees, the ruined credit, and not to mention the shame. Carmen Kangaroo came right on time. She was short, round-faced, and beautiful, with long dark hair to her mid-back. She wouldn't make eye contact or shake my hand or answer me when I asked about her unusual last name. She just bopped on her heels and said, "I have to pee." I tossed my head back. "Third door on the left." Carmen left the bathroom door cracked. More than cracked, practically open, her piss stream violent against the sides of the bowl. She shouted over the peeing, "Some people call me Rue. Not everyone. Just my friends. You can call me Carmen." I refused to talk over her piss, so I waited for her to come out before responding. There didn't seem to be a flush coming, though. Just more questions. "Do you go out in Southie a lot? I heard last call is at 1. Is that true? That's so early." Then the doorbell rang. I jumped, both from the noise — it was more of a prison buzzer than a ringer — and because this was not an open house. I'd created buffers for each appointment, and not only that, I'd masked the address on the listing. I'd been careful. At the door was a wimpy, nebbish-looking thing with floppy brown hair and pointy elbows. He wore a nasty look on his face. I said, "Who are you?" But before he could respond, a yell from Carmen came down the hallway. "Dude, you're late." "Sorry, babe," he said, stepping past me. The two of them stood nose to nose in the hallway, whispering. I strained to hear what they were saying, but all I could make out was, "Small." "Old." "Weird." I turned to shut the door. Except now there was someone else standing on the stoop. A tall, skinny blonde with a horrid haircut. This was turning into some sort of circus, exactly what I didn't want.